Good morning, everybody. That was actually a little better than I was expecting. Pretty good. This is cool for me. So thanks for indulging a bit in my story. Let me first say, though, my story is meant to just be that, my story. It's not meant to generalize the state of healthcare or the experience that every single cancer patient has. But I am curious to know, show of hands, who's been touched by cancer in some way? A friend, a loved one, perhaps yourself. All right, look around, guys. Like that's 95% of the room. And despite advancements, more and more people get sick, and we're getting sick younger and younger. And so to find out in my 30s that all of a sudden I had something to deal with, for lack of better terms, that like really sucked. To have to be a young dad and a working professional and all of a sudden be dealing with something. And so when it all went down was right around the time of getting the honor of taking my daughter to the father-daughter dance. And I had this lump on my neck for like months. And here's the problem with dudes who are sick is we don't do anything about it. And the ladies in the room know what we're talking about. And so I was getting nagged for months and months and months. Honey, you got to just go. I'm sure it's just nothing, but will you go get that thing taken care of? And I didn't. Until this dinner, the dinner before our father-daughter dance, when I had my daughter Izzy and a bunch of her little friends and a bunch of the dads, and we went out to dinner before the dance. And my good friend Andrew, who's a general surgeon, was sitting next to me. And he goes, dude, what's that thing growing on your neck? And I was like, dude, I know, I should get that taken care of, right? Like all of a sudden it was a guy telling me to deal with something. It was like bro code kicked in. And he goes, you know what, come to my office. He had an ASC. He's like, come to my office. You know, we'll ultrasound it. I'm sure it's just a cyst and we'll pop that thing out. And so we ultrasound it. He figures it's a cyst, no big deal. We go in, you know, puts me under, takes the thing out. I wake up. So my wife is half Portuguese, very dark skin. And when I woke up, she was white as a piece of paper. And I knew right away. I was like, something ain't right. And so sure enough, that cyst was not a cyst. It was a tumor. And thank goodness, Andrew, this is where it's good to have friends, by the way. Cut the red tape. Andrew's wife is a pathologist. So that shit got fast tracked. And we found out real quick that it was melanoma in my lymph node, metastatic melanoma. And so now the phone calls start. How can we get EJ, you know, taken care of? And within a matter of days, I find myself in this space that I've seen Old Navy dressing rooms more attractive than the space where I was getting ready for my PET scan. That awesome multi-hour experience where you have nothing to yourself but your thoughts and maybe your prayers if that's your thing. And that's what I should have been really focused on at the time was me. But I wasn't focused on me at all. And so before we go down that story a little bit more, there was a reason why I had never been sick before. Like, let me back up a step. I had never broken a bone prior to this. I had never been admitted to a hospital. My only real experience with a hospital was that awesome experience of having children. And those of you who are dads in the room, wives love teasing their husbands because what do we always complain about when our wives are giving birth is how uncomfortable we are as dads. There's like nowhere comfortable to sleep. And my wife is like, I'm sure you're uncomfortable. I'm sorry for your suffering. But that was it. That was my only experience. And so everything that I knew was based on other experiences. So let me ask the room, does anybody recognize this hospital? Grace Sloan Memorial Hospital from Grey's Anatomy. And I find it interesting that, like, okay, I didn't show you, they don't even show this part of the hospital on the show anymore, I don't think. Okay. And yet, several of you right away had identified that this was Grace Sloan Memorial Hospital, the fictitious hospital from Grey's Anatomy, which I think actually is a real, I think they shot scenes like this at a veterans hospital, I believe. So this space does actually exist. But our perceptions of what our healthcare experience is going to be, if we've never gone through something significant like cancer, our perceptions are shaped by whatever else we see. And so think about how much medical television America has had thrown at them. So we watch Grey's Anatomy in our house. We watch like the spin-off Private Practice, which was like super bougie medicine in like Malibu. That doesn't, I can't imagine that style of medicine exists in that form from that show. We watch Chicago Med. We would love that show. We can go on and on. I mean, if you're a daytime junkie, we talk about General Hospital. If you want a good laugh, we could talk about Scrubs. You know, Fox had to get in on the game, right? So House MD. If you want to go old school, we can go Doogie. And maybe the best one of all, the classic ER. Even Friends got into the game with Dr. Drake Ramore, okay? And while it wasn't a true hospital, I have to give homage to maybe the greatest medical show of all time, MASH. This is still the show that I watch like when I'm sick and in bed. I go find it. It's on Disney Plus, I think, and I still throw on MASH. But I'm frustrated anytime I watch like a medical drama and I see a space. I go, bullshit. That's not what it really looks like. That wasn't my experience of an infusion room. That wasn't my experience of where I chilled before going in for an MRI or a CT or my PET scan or where my beloved family was waiting or where I got the news that I was, stage 3 metastatic melanoma. Like none of those spaces that I experienced were what I thought I was going to see based on the perceptions that television had given me. Now, for context, I'm not going to out my hospital, okay? They're not in the room. But I will say it is a world-class hospital, top ranked globally. You would all know the name. And so I expected the best. And so back to that PET scan. I had no idea what a PET scan was. And so we get this appointment. And I remember like the first sort of moment that I was like, all right, this is going to be interesting was when the hospital told me, we don't have any appointments for you at the main campus. So we're going to send you to one of our satellite locations. I didn't even know what a satellite location was at that point. They gave me an address. They said, go there at this time, at this place. They'll be ready for you. And again, I'm thinking like world class care. Was living in New England. When you get sick in New England, you get to basically go, what rock star am I going to get to save my life right now? You've got like the greatest choice. And so I didn't exactly expect to pull up to this. I didn't expect to basically like pull up to this place in the hood. I covered like the awning logo to protect the innocent. But this was like a really dangerous neighborhood. And it just wasn't at all what I envisioned. And what worried me the most was I knew this was a very long appointment. And I was wondering, like, what's my wife going to do for the next 3 hours? Is she going to be comfortable? Is she going to be cared for? Well, I don't want her walking around this neighborhood. Our original thought was she was just going to go shopping, go get a cup of coffee. We pulled up to this spot. We're like, you're not walking anywhere alone in this neighborhood. There's a 0% chance you're going to have to chill here. And so now, where did my worry go? Where did my attention go? It went from me to her. The focus should have been on my health. And instead, the focus became on my wife's comfort and my wife's safety. Curb appeal was a very real thing for me. Like, this was my first physical touch point with this healthcare system because all of my care had already happened, at that ASC with my buddy. And this was my first time touching the hospital that I had asked to save me. And so I thought, well, maybe like the waiting room would be all right. And like, it wasn't. In fact, this picture that I have is after it was remodeled. Okay. So, I mean, I had seen DMV waiting areas that were more comfortable and inviting than where my wife had to spend several hours, which, oh, by the way, like for the extra icing on top, this was also my daughter's 10th birthday, which y'all know is like a milestone birthday for your kids. So we had to miss that day. We had to miss that fun so that she could, be with me in this horrific space where then I go into the worse than Old Navy dressing room to get in my scrubs and get ready to go, experience something that I'd never quite experienced before. I will tell you though, like this is the greatest waiting area I've ever seen in healthcare. Isn't this beautiful? Yeah, it's awesome. It's too bad it's a JetBlue lounge, um, but isn't it almost like perverted to think that there are environments in airports that we would rather spend our time than where we have our family hang out when we're getting care. And one of the coolest things about this experience for me here at HealthSpaces has been talking with many of you, either over breakfast, lunch, beverages, sourcing meetings, where I've heard directly from you some of the things that you're energetically doing to elevate experiences. Somebody shared with me yesterday a very cool thing that they have planned that I won't share because it's her story to tell, uh, but of how they're using experiences outside of healthcare to elevate the infusion experience, which we're gonna talk about in a little bit. But back to perceptions of experience and how we judge experience. We work with healthcare, but we work with a lot of other industries too. And what we always say, particularly, like we work with a lot of banks. Anybody here like going to the bank? No, exactly. What we tell companies is your customer, your member, your patient, they are judging your experience based on whatever their last experience was with whoever they visited before you. So if I went to Starbucks and had a great experience, and then I went to the dentist, whether I realize it or not, that patient experience that I have with the dentist is being predicated on my customer experience at Starbucks. That was probably a really bad example, by the way, because if you're drinking coffee before you go to the dentist, that's a mistake. But again, perceptions. Our experiences, the way we view experiences, it is all based on other things that we do. I'm a Delta guy. I'm a Royal Caribbean guy. I'm a Hilton guy. And so I use those experiences to judge everything else, even if you're outside of industry. And so I really encourage you as you're designing spaces, as you're thinking through experiences, as you're thinking about the totality of the journey, the member experience journey, that end to end experience, challenge yourself to look outside of industry. What else is happening in the lives of our patients? What else are they experiencing in their lives, in our market, in the community that we serve, that we can emulate, if not elevate? Because believe it or not, something like this lounge experience, this is what a best in class waiting experience is. Now I recognize that you have to have environments that are easy to be kept clean and all that stuff. I get you can't probably build something just like this, but you can emulate it. and you can deliver the same warm feeling that we get when we're in a best in class lounge experience at an airport. So this picture was taken right after my second surgery, and the reason why I show you this photo in particular is because this was truly the last room that I remember feeling comfortable in, was that recovery space right after surgery. You see, there's like windows, there's trees, it's bright. I recall it being very comfortable and big, but it was also the last and maybe only space in my cancer journey that I ever could have imagined feeling comfortable having my kids there. And that was a really tough part of being in my 30s, being sick, and having a young family. Was my kids had a really hard time understanding, why is dad different right now? Why is he not home a lot? Why does he keep going to the hospital? Why is he, always having these hospital bracelets on? Like what's going on? It's been going on for months. Like what's going on with dad? And so yeah, we told them dad's got cancer, but he's going to be okay. And we had a baby at the time. My two older kids, while they understood, there was still fear. And so one of the pieces of advice that we had received from their pediatrician was, it would be really great if you could involve them in the experience sometime. Bring them to the hospital. Let them see that you are okay. Let them see that it's not scary. I wasn't taking them here. This is scary. This was also not the room that I envisioned getting the news. Like when you see somebody on TV getting the news that they're sick, or you think of like that, that Tim McGraw song, "Live Like You're Dying." Like when they're getting the news, I don't know. I picture myself in this really nice doctor's office with diplomas on the wall and shit. And wasn't this like this was the room where I got my news? This wasn't the room where I was taking my kids. And the worst part is, I come to find out I'm not alone. My experience, while not universal, uh, sadly is experienced by many, and many in urban markets where you would expect great healthcare, great facilities, great environments, the best of the best. So my friend Derek D, he's an actor that you wouldn't know him, but you've seen him. He's done a ton of commercials. He's done a bunch of comedy specials. You have for sure at some point your eyes have seen this guy. Um, and he's real sick right now. And he's in the New York metro area seeking care. And I want to show you. He posted this on Instagram the other day. I just want you to see this real quick.
So I'm back in this super fun room again, huh? Oh, look at that. Yeah, nice. Oh, we do got the Himalayan salt lamp. That's always lovely. Yeah, they just injected me with some radioactive glucose, so I'm radioactive, radioactive. That's the song, right? Yeah, gonna go hang out in a tube for a half hour. That's fun. Okay. Especially if you're claustrophobic. Okay. Oh, geez. Yeah, gonna see if the cancer in my lung is either smaller, praying for that, or it might be the same size, hopefully not any bigger. But yeah, that's what we're here for. And yeah, this is my life right now. Okay, this right there, that, yep, indeed. Okay, cheers.
We're too young to be dealing with this shit. And when you look at that room, like, how is that room helping him heal? How is that room helping him feel positive about the outlook? Great, you put a Himalayan sea salt lamp in the room to really zhuzh the place up. Like, thanks for the effort, Tiger. Like, that's fantastic. And so we talked to the phone. I was like, was that the norm? He's like, yeah, that's the norm. He's like, I spent a lot of time alone in that room. You don't want to hang out with your family in that room. You don't want your family to see you in that space. I have more selfies of myself alone. Not once did I feel like I could bring my kids to a treatment day. Not once did I want to subject my wife to a day hanging out with me on a treatment day. I posted on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago that I was going to be speaking to you all about this topic. And a client who's outside of healthcare reached out to me, said, I want to learn more about what you're going to say to these people. And so we had a conversation. I said, what perked your interest, Brett? He said, well, my wife just finished battling breast cancer successfully. And our experience was exactly the same. We were embarrassed at where we had our care. We never felt comfortable bringing our children to the hospital. And I'll tell you what, I made a rule. When I first got sick, I made a rule. I said, if cancer's not on my calendar, I don't have it. That was my rule for me. Like, I'm too young for this crap. I've got too much going on. If I don't have an appointment, I am not sick. But I also, kind of had it in my head that I wasn't going to take a day off from work. That's pretty tough when you're sitting in a room like this to be jumping on Zoom meetings and to be taking appointments and banging out email. But that's what I wanted for me. And so when I mentioned earlier, like, we're getting sicker and sicker and sicker, I remember the social worker from the hospital, you get two people come walking around when you're getting your infusions, the social workers who want to make sure that you're okay, and the volunteers who are coming around with the awesome juice boxes. And I remember I said to the social worker, I said, you know what I wish? I said, every now and again when I'm in here, it occurs to me, like, my vision of an infusion room was going to be a bunch of old people. And it's not. There's a bunch of young professionals here. I was like, could we have like a hospital, like, chamber of commerce meeting where we have like a networking group? I was like, I bet we could do a lot of business together amongst just the people who are hanging out here at the hospital. But if I had had one wish for that space, and this is going to sound crazy, and maybe I'm a little twisted and overly driven, I don't know. I wish my hospital had a business center. I would have happily been like, yo, hook me up to my medicine, put me in a room with a cubicle, and I'm just going to sit here and work. And when that bag's empty, come get me. But don't let me sit in this stupid chair. Put me at a desk. What's the difference? I don't care. Like, let's go. I got life to live. This picture is actually a stock photo that I took off the website of the hospital where I got cared for. That's the other cautionary tale. Perception is reality, except for when it's not. This is a photo that they use to say this is what your experience is going to be like. This was my reality at the same hospital. That's not the same space. That's not the same environment. That's not the same vibe. It's dark. It's not light. It's not airy. It's not comfortable. And so why are we lying? Why are we lying to folks? So one of the last things that I want to share with you, back to the whole point about, work, was John Borsler shared a great statistic yesterday. Hopefully you guys caught it. 60% of Americans, he said, delay or defer or maybe even ignore a healthcare need because of how far away, how difficult it is to get to the environment, to get to the care provider. And over the past couple months at our company, we've been thinking about that. Even in advance of hearing John's research, we knew you can bring the patient to the care, or you can bring the care to the patient. And so we've been thinking about warehouses and plants in rural areas. We've been thinking about high-rise office buildings. The Sears Tower, what I think they call it something different now, but what was the Sears Tower in Chicago has 15,000 people working in that building. And you know what they all have in common? Virtually all insured. And so we thought, how can we bring care to them? And so I want to show you something we created. And some of you saw this yesterday. We've got some great feedback on it so far. We've created a modular clinic environment. We've created something that can be picked up and dropped and moved later on. Something with a very low cost of entry, but that again brings healthcare to the people. This space can accommodate basic vital checks, blood draws, flu shots, and even teledoc visits. You know, I think about somebody who's maybe working in an Amazon warehouse and they have a teledoc appointment. Where are they going to go take that teledoc appointment? They don't have an office. They don't have a conference room space. So if we pop one of these are about 430 square feet if you're curious. We pop one of these in a warehouse, or we pop one of these next to the Starbucks in a high-rise office building. Now all of a sudden, care becomes significantly more accessible because I don't need now hours off. When I was sick and I was working in downtown Boston, do you know how often I just needed vitals and a blood draw? In order to go to the next step, I had to leave work or I had to leave home to get down to the hospital to spend hours to have that done. Where if it were right downstairs, it would have been infinitely more accessible. And so if that's something that interests you, if you're like, that's cool, I hadn't seen that before, the QR code on your screen will take you to that same video if it's something you want to watch back again. There's even a little form down there if you want to have a conversation. But myself and my colleague Robert will be here throughout the day if you have any questions about what we call our JunXion micro clinic. And I think it's going to tie in well to our next talk. And so in closing, I just have a few quick asks for you. On behalf of somebody who went through the journey, who dealt with ugly spaces that made my cancer suck more, please don't think of this as just patient experience. Think of it truly as a customer experience journey, an end-to-end experience. I would ask you as well to take tips from hospitality, take tips from retail, take tips from transportation. And as weird as it sounds, make cancer a family event. Involve everybody, because the loved ones of the cancer patient, they want to be involved. They feel the need to be there for their loved ones, but the spaces don't allow it. The spaces are simply not that inviting. And lastly, create a space where I can live even if I'm in the process of dying. And that would have been the greatest gift that my hospital could have given me. And in fact, when I moved to South Carolina, I don't know if Bill's in the room from MUSC, but I sought to move my care to MUSC once I moved, and I was in remission and just going through my scans. And I went from a world-class medical city to the South where I had a perception that my care would not be as good. And I remember walking into that cancer floor at MUSC, and I was blown away. And I was like, man, if this was what cancer had looked like for me, this would have felt a lot better because that space was incredible. So guys, this is a picture of me on my last day, leaving the hospital in the height of COVID, because my medical providers told me, you know what, stop fighting cancer, because you actually have a better chance of getting COVID just by coming in here to the hospital. So we're going to call you done. So this is a photo on my very last day of fighting cancer. I'm now 6 years cancer-free, and I'm in front of you saying thank you very much for delivering better spaces to your patients. Thank you, guys.